I mentioned last night in episode 12, are we on now? Can't quite think. That this chapter really is kind of about Margaret Thatcher to some extent. And I've kind of thought about this a lot over the years, that, you know, there's a kind of background element of the Thatcher government in all of the books I've written, really. And I don't know whether that's just some attempt to try and place the way I felt about politics and about things that were really significant to me as I was growing up, and, you know, particularly from the age of about 16 to 24, 25, 26, when all these different influences from music and literature and politics and all the rest of it felt really kind of sharp and visceral, you know. Not wanting to write a book about politics, but realising, you know, two things: the kind of anger that I felt about that, but also, you know, the comedy value in a lot of it when you now look back at that time. And I think that's probably what this is all about, really. That, you know, it's about people with hopes and dreams, working class hopes and dreams at a time where it kind of felt like there was no outlet for it, you know, just because the political situation seemed to be closing in on them, but it never killed the dream. And I can really, that's the root idea behind The Last Days of Disco, to be honest. So anyway, the chapter's called And She Will Watch Over You Wherever You May Be. And this is the second part of it. Last night's was really about Gary and his position in the army. This is more about the Heatwave Disco's increasing success and Fat Franny Duncan's attempts to quash it at every turn. Bob, it's me. These two cunts have got a party on at the Tory Club on the 25th. April? What? Aye, this month. Get on to Des and the painter. Did you phone him, the Cassidy boy? Aye, I phoned the cunt. Offered him a place at the table. Fucking walloper's no interested. He told me they were doing alright. Stupid prick also told me the bookings that they had. Fat Franny could hear Hobnail sniggering, but the fat man wasn't in a mood for humour. Listen, gie Ali Snedden a phone. He's the manager of the Tory Club, owes me a favour. Tell him Des and Wally will do the door on the 25th, free fucking gratis. There was silence at the other end of the phone. Have you got it? Aye, replied Hobnail. Don't worry, I've got it. The phone's tone flatlined. Bob Dale hated Fat Franny at these times. Ali Snedden was his mate. Why couldn't the fat man not fucking phone him direct? He could be such a wanker at times. 25th of April 1982, 8:45 p.m. Despite a difficult start, with all the early accusations from the punters that they didn't know what they were doing, unforeseen circumstances had intervened and their popularity was now definitely on the rise. That Heatwave Disco had anything in common with the Thatcher government was surprising. That they should be here at the Tory party's Kilmarnock HQ was, for Joey Miller at least, nothing short of shocking. Joey had been here with a group of colleagues from CND only 5 months ago. They'd banged on the massive wood-panelled doors of the old Georgian building supporting the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp and their demands to overturn the decision to site 96 nuclear cruise missiles in Berkshire. And now here he was, walking through those same black doors to entertain people who held views to which he was fundamentally opposed. A different woman called Margaret phoned and made the booking for her husband's 40th birthday party. Bobby had taken the call. He didn't care for the Tories either, but he reckoned their money would be the same colour as everybody else's. The venue was a Conservative club in Kilmarnock. Bizarrely, the Conservative club was immediately adjacent to the Labour club. Private functions were regularly held in both, as the alcohol was subsidised to bowling club levels. The Labour Club was an unusual building halfway up a very steep hill and perched on 3 levels on the banks of the river behind the Palace Theatre. It had a similar concept to Frank Lloyd Wright's famous Fallen Water building in America, but resolved and constructed to a much poorer standard. Its stained brutalist concrete was in stark contrast to its more refined neighbour. The Conservative Club was at the bottom of a hill. Both buildings shared a car park and a service area. The Tory Retreat was a more conventional two-storey sandstone villa sitting on its own, out of context and severed from the original surroundings by the town's one-way traffic system. Only members of the club, and therefore the party, could book a function there. The Labour Club, on the other hand, would take anyone's cash. Joey was in a bad mood. Bobby and he had recently left school in advance of their exams. This had gone down badly with Joey's mum, as her son's explanation that a career as a second-in-command of a Kilmarnock-based mobile DJ business hadn't actually matched her aspirations. Bobby's initial dialogue with his own parents was similar, but his dad was an accomplice, and with his own parents, and therefore had given up the moral high ground weeks before. His mum was worryingly ambivalent about most things these days, including, it seemed, her youngest son's future plans. "What the fuck are we doing here?" moaned Joey for the umpteenth time that day. Even Jimmy Stevenson was getting fed up with the constant complaining. "Christ, son, you're like my missus. On and on and on and on till you end up saying, 'Fuck it, I'm away to the pub.'" "Come on, Joey, a couple of hours and we'll be out of here," said Bobby. He patted Joey on the back as he got out of the van. Hamish May, who'd been sitting in the front with Jimmy, came out and put an arm round Joey. Jimmy reached over and shook Joey's hand. "For fuck's sake, you think you were going in for an operation, the way we're going on?" Bobby was laughing as he said this. Hamish and Jimmy laughed as well. Joey could only offer the crooked smile through gritted teeth. Hello. You boys must be the Heatwaves. And you must be Andy?" Margaret McIntyre laughed, nervous at Bobby's attempts to diffuse the tension a bit. "Oh, no, I'm Margaret. Andy's upstairs," she said. "You're a little bit late. I'd hoped that you might have been here earlier, before most of the people got here." Her tone was polite, but her exasperation was detectable, even if it was mostly concealed between her veneered surface. "But please, just go up quickly, right up on the right and up to the left, and you'll see the space at the end of the hall. You can set up there." "Right-o, Margot," said Jimmy. He had heard what she'd said, but he decided that a remarkable resemblance to Penelope Keith called for a different reference. He stopped himself for patting her tweed skirted behind on the way past. Maybe later, thought Jimmy. Andy, whose birthday was being celebrated, looked every inch the true blue. He was dressed in a blue pinstripe suit with a pale blue shirt and a bright yellow tie. He looked almost identical to every other male at the party, only the ties seemed to offer colourful contrasts. "Bloody hell, everybody looks like they're a fucking political convention." Joey's earlier annoyance had given way to bemusement, and Bobby could detect disdainful pity. "They all look about 55, remarked Hamish. No one had paid the DJs and their crew any attention, so they'd walked into the upper floor space. But Hamish had spoken a bit too loudly, and several men looked round sharply. They continued staring as the four made their way back out to the van for the remainder of the equipment. "This is gonna be shite." Joey had convinced himself that the night would have no redeeming features. Bobby sighed deeply but said nothing. They'd arrived almost 45 minutes late and were still a good 20 minutes away from sounds that entertained punters. The function room was set up all wrong, with most of the buffet tables sitting across a small rectangle of dance floor. There were already too many people there for the room, and many were demonstrating the loudness and bravado that are a frequent consequence of alcohol. In the 2 months that Heatwave had been in existence, they'd had a few bad nights. Normally Joey would just play out boring chart music, the novelty songs that everybody hates but dances to anyway, and the inevitable requests for 60s medleys of groups like Edison Lighthouse and Middle of the Road, who were actually from the 70s. Bobby spoke infrequently on these nights. He had assumed the persona of a performer and felt that such audiences didn't deserve his best work. Picking up the money at the end of the night was a sole stimulus for such evenings, and so far, with the exception of that traumatic first, they had been paid by generally contented customers. This night was different though. "See the two weird-looking stewards watching us when we came in?" Hamish's agitation had been apparent on the final lift of the record boxes from the van. Nobody questioned why bouncers had suddenly become stewards. It just seemed appropriate in this context. "Can't say I really noticed, mate," replied Bobby. Aye, I did," said Joey, Looked kind of familiar, but no sure if they were. Christ, will you two stop fucking looking for problems? There's too many Tories, their suits are too blue, their bouncers are shifty, their stairs are too steep. Fucking hell, let's just get on with it and get paid. The Heatwave leader had spoken, although Hamish felt it important to make one final observation. You were the one complaining about the stairs, you cunt. When Bobby, Joey and Hamish finally assembled the sound and light experience that was now known as Heatwave Disco, Margaret came over. She wasn't happy. More than 3 weeks have elapsed since the United Nations Security Council resolution was passed, calling upon the Argentine forces to withdraw. During that time, far from withdrawing, the Argentine government have put reinforcements of men, equipment, and materials on the island. If we have not yet reached a settlement, the blame lies at the feet of the Argentine government. Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister, to the House of Commons, 25th of April 1982. You'll have to move your van, said Margaret McIntyre tersely and in a way that suggested she'd been reprimanded by someone else. You're parked in a space reserved for the local party leader. She turned and looked towards the two stewards. Is he coming, like, Margot? Said Jimmy. Sorry? Margaret had been addressing Bobby, and it had surprised her to hear the low grumbling voice behind her. My name is Margaret, she said, and turned to face Jimmy. She breathed in, hands on hips, as if to deliver something profound, but then sighed and turned back to Bobby. Could you just move the van, please, and then please get on with the music? She turned and strode away. Ooh, Mrs. Laddie-da Gunnar Graham, said Hamish, waving his hand theatrically in her direction. It wasn't witnessed by Margaret, but Andy and 4 others at his table had seen it. Hey, Larry fucking Grayson, get a fucking move on. Bobby's patience was being sorely tested. Jimmy, go down and shift the van and then come back up. Jimmy walked over to the door and noticed the smaller of the two black-suited stewards watching him intently. Almost an hour and a quarter after the party should have started, Heatwave's lights illuminated the function hall and were creating unusual effects on the elaborate ceiling cornice of the old Georgian hall. The sound quality was better than expected, but when the distinctive riff of Should I Stay or Should I Go kicked in, everyone froze due to its volume, exactly what the effect DJ Joey had anticipated. Joey, for fuck's sake, The Clash, seriously? Only one song in, and Bobby was now regretting having taken this booking. Joey smiled suspiciously as the angelic upstarts followed. That new anthem of disaffected youth. The special's Ghost Town was already in his hand. 2 songs in and the crowd was growing increasingly disgruntled. Job almost done. Down in the car park, the VW camper van reversed slowly back into an alternative space against an adjacent retaining wall. It was dark and sheltered from the intrusive sodium illumination of the main streetlights. Jimmy normally hung about and had a sleep in the back for a couple of hours, but tonight the darkness would force him. Tonight the darkness would allow him the joint he'd been coveting since finding it down the back of the rear seats at the start of the week. He'd head back upstairs later. A tap at the passenger side window startled him. He rolled the window down. Thanks for moving the van, mate. It was one of the stewards, the smaller one. Aye, no bother, wee man. The joint was still in Jimmy's hand below the sideline of the door. He was reluctant to let it go for fear of losing it down the side of his seat. I think your brake lights out, said the steward. Is his brake lights out, Des? His brake lights out, Wally. A deeper voice from the rear of the van responded. Jimmy glanced furtively at the rear and side mirrors, but it was too dark to make anyone out. Need to get that fixed, pal, said the smaller steward, the one who'd just been referred to as Wally. Jimmy dropped the joint to the footwell as carefully as he could. He opened the door and slid out, pushing past Wally and moving quickly to the rear of the van, where the torch held by Des confirmed there was indeed a smashed brake light. He left the driver's side door slightly open. Must have hit a wall there, eh? No luck, mate, said Des, shaking his head at this unfortunate mishap. You think I'm a fucking idiot? I had no fucking wall. That was the two of yous that smashed it. Hey, hold on there, Humpty Dumpty, We asked you to move your van. You moved it and it hit the wall, said Des calmly. Jimmy was getting angry, but sensed it might be better to accept the bouncer's version. He also wanted to know where Willie had gone, but Des had moved closer, towering over him and blocking both view and access to the driver's side of the vehicle. I'm not sure there's any point in taking this further, pal. Des poked his finger on Jimmy's chest. Away back and join Curly, Larry and Mo up there. Just mind and get that fixed now, eh? With that he stepped back, allowing Jimmy to ease past him and catch Willie leaning against the front of the van, smiling. Upstairs in the flamboyant function room, things were getting worse. Where's my pint? Said Joey, just as alternative Ulster faded out and the start of Eton rifles reverberated off the walls. Will you fucking get up with that music? Fuck me, every cunt's glowering at us. I can't speak over this. Get out the Lionel Richie and Phil Collins stuff. Did you hear me? Where's my drink? Repeated Joey. He was secretly pleased that his choices of music were irritating the partygoers and Bobby. He'd fucking think twice about bookings like this in future, he was certain. Fucking cunty barman wouldn't serve us for being underage. Bobby was raging. Technically the barman was correct. Joey was still 17. But it worsened Bobby's deteriorating mood that he'd broken the unwritten law of gigging. The band, performer, entertainer, DJ always got served. Jimmy didn't return. He decided to stand outside watching his vehicle. Willie and Des had gone back up and no further threats had been issued. It was a pretty cold late spring evening, but at least Jimmy could see any approaches from the van from where he was standing. Upstairs, tempers flared when a request from one woman for twist and shout went a-begging. She looked like Crystal Carrington and sounded like the Queen. Joey mocked her accent. Margaret McIntyre came over to intervene in the contretemps, threatening non-payment. Birthday boy Andy followed, issuing threats of violence. Hamish May, assuming the role of minder, retaliated with a few of his own. Bobby sensed a serious problem developing. They were at the opposite side of the hall and up a floor from the principal means of exit. The priority was becoming more about damage limitation than fee recovery. Hamish was prone to the great gesture without thinking of the consequences. He had achieved some local notoriety as the kid who'd climbed out of a first floor window onto the roof of an adjacent lorry for yet another common room bet. The bet was for a £5 and actually only required him to stand on top of the vehicle for 30 seconds. In the event, he was out there for so long the vehicle eventually drove away with him clinging to its top rails. It was difficult to pinpoint what kicked it all off, but Joey later recalled seeing the two students over at a table of 5 males gesticulating and pointing towards him. They all came over. Margaret McIntyre was in the middle of it. Her arms were outstretched, trying to keep order. There was some initial jostling, finger-pointing, and a smattering of rebuttals in the form of abusive menace from the defiant figure of Hamish May. He stood tall, silhouetted against the flashing backdrop of Heatwave Disco's 2 main light boxes. As the situation deteriorated and the first slap was issued, his employers for the evening instinctively crouched down behind the table holding up the decks. The main reason for this was to avoid the swinging microphone, which Hamish was whirling like a demented Roger Daltrey whenever anyone came within 10 feet of him. Bobby was also trying to figure out a way to get to the one exit door undetected. When violence was in the air, both Bobby and Joey were firmly in the flight camp. Hamish could represent the primal fight instincts of the species if he wanted. The microphone standoff continued for about 15 minutes until Willie the painter came over, all windmilling arms and timing his advance perfectly to plough into Heatwave's man between rotations. Through a gap in the cabinets, Joey saw Hamish stagger back a few steps on one foot, like Chaplin's tramp in City Lights. This resemblance was reinforced by the small strobe light box that had fallen over, landing on its on switch. Its flickering, flashing light gave the action a monochromatic, slow-motion filmic quality, but instead of boxing ring ropes propelling him back into the fray, the rest of the light boxes tumbled under Hamish's weight. The decks and their wobbly, trestled support followed, with the two trembling DJs underneath. Bobby couldn't see what was happening, but it was clear that things weren't progressing well for the disco's champion. It sounded to Joey like the blue-suited Tories were kicking the shit out of him, and apart from the odd muffled squeal of "Tory cunts," it didn't seem like much resistance was being offered. and then suddenly there was quiet. "I really think you should leave now," screamed Margaret McIntyre, her head bent down to shout under the fallen table. Her eyes moist and fully formed tears weren't far away. "We're no fucking paying, incidentally, but any trouble, and the police are getting called." This was the first time birthday boy Andy had spoken to them, and his high-pitched Highlands accent took Bobby and Joey by surprise. Hamish had been escorted outside by Des Brick and Wally the painter. As they did so, it had briefly registered with him that they were there on the night that he'd electrocuted himself. He said nothing to them about it, though, his guts in agony from an earlier kick that caught him in the abdomen. Jimmy hadn't been aware of the chaos playing out upstairs, but he had heard the commotion of the first group of people heading down. Jimmy ducked behind a large solid stone column that was helping to support a heavily indented portico. Jimmy had looked up at it earlier and had been impressed. A lovely building for a showery absolute cunts, he'd thought. A ceasefire had emerged up in the function room. No payment, but at least no further trouble or damage to the gear. Bobby reckoned that there was something of a result in this. Joey went down to let Jimmy know the story and to tell him that they would be leaving early. Big Hamish was outside, vomiting over a wall into the river below. They assembled the gear in a neat pile at the unlit rear of the building and waited for Jimmy. Nobody spoke. Jimmy nipped back upstairs to go to the toilet, and on the way back down the stairs, when he was sure no one was looking, drew a small rectangular Hitler moustache and a black side shed on the new portrait of the current Prime Minister. She was staring down, watching dictatorially over all who climbed the stairs from her exalted position inside a Baroque frame, painted to reinforce the image of a contemporary Boadicea that her supporters believed her to be. When he got back outside, Joey was stunned to see 4 policemen there, sniffing around the van and asking questions of the van driver and the equipment owner. Hamish May was being forcibly held against the wall he'd just vomited over by 2 of them. Joey was amazed that they'd appeared before the ink was dry in the picture. Maybe Thatcher's boastful claims that the Tories had put more bobbies on the beat was actually true after all. One young policeman emerged from the darker side of the van with half a dozen large bottles of spirits, and Joey's heart visibly sank. "How did these get in the van, lads?" "You're fucking joking," said Bobby. Joey burst out laughing. Des Brick and Wally the painter came out. Ali Snedden, manager of the Conservative Club, was standing between them. "The booze got nicked during the night," said the manager. "There was a ruckus, which they started, and while it was all happening, they 40 ouncers went fucking walking." "You're a fucking liar," screamed Bobby. "They fucking assaulted us. And they never fucking paid us either," added Joey. "What about you, Fanny boss?" The old copper who was holding Hamish addressed him directly. "The 2 of them fucking battered us and then pushed us down the fucking stairs." Joey and Bobby looked at each other. Was he making this up? Had they really done such a thing? Des and Wally looked impassive, eyes neither confirming nor denying. The bottles were placed in one of the 3 police cars in the car park. It did seem to Jimmy like a bit of Reagan and Carter type overkill, but he was determined not to speak. Nobody had so far referred to him, and he remained partially hidden by the column. "Into the motors, boys," said the most senior copper. "I don't fucking think so," replied Joey. About a minute later, the 3 young Heatwave operatives were in the back of the cars. "Hey you, Buster Blood Vessel, you two. You're going to need a much fucking bigger pillar if you're hiding for us. I'm assuming you're the van driver." Half an hour later, and all 4 of them were sitting in a small, bare cell at Kilmarnock Police Station. Police Detective Chief Superintendent Donald McAllister's police station. It was just after midnight.
That night, another soldier